Welcome to Team Historical. Your journey through the epic stories of the past begins now.
Some centuries just kind of come and go. They're just a collection of years on a calendar. But then there are others. Centuries that are genuine turning points for, well, all of humanity. The 1700s? Yeah, that was one of those. Let's get into this, because this 100-year span really did set the stage for pretty much everything we know about the world today.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth did a single century manage to completely rewrite thousands of years of how we lived, who was in charge, and what we believed? Well, the answer is a wild story of ideas that were absolutely explosive and revolutions that were even more so.
And to really get a sense of how huge this change was, just look at this. It's a total night and day difference. In 1700, your life was almost certainly decided by which king you happened to serve and what God you were told to believe in. But today, we live in a world that's shaped by the idea of citizens' rights and the unshakable laws of science. That entire massive shift, it all got started right here.
Okay, so first, let's just paint a picture of what things were like. Before all the chaos and change, you had the old world. And this was a world that had been running on the same operating system for centuries. A world of powerful kings, vast empires, and a very, very rigid sense of order.
Think about what this actually meant for people. Your entire life was basically controlled from the top down, either by a king or by the church. Your chances in life, they were pretty much set the moment you were born. And actual knowledge, real education, that was a luxury saved for the absolute elite. For almost everyone, life just was. It was slow, predictable, and it felt like it would never, ever change.
But here's the thing. While everything on the surface looked calm and permanent, underneath it all, something was brewing. New ideas were starting to bubble up, and that pressure for change was slowly but surely building. You could say the foundations of that old world were starting to crack.
And what blew those cracks wide open was a movement we call the Enlightenment. This wasn't a war fought with cannons and muskets, not at first anyway. No, this was a revolution of the mind, a complete rethinking of what it even meant to be a person living in society.
And it all started with these ideas that sound so simple to us today, but were completely earth-shattering back then. You had thinkers like John Locke who started to argue that, hey, maybe people aren't just property of the king. Maybe we're all born with certain natural rights just because we're human.
Then others, like Voltaire, picked up that ball and ran with it. They championed the idea of freedom. Freedom to think what you want, say what you want, believe what you want. The suggestion that you should be able to question things, even question the king, without being thrown in a dungeon, that was a direct assault on the whole system.
And then came the real knockout punch from guys like Rousseau. The idea that people deserve a say in how they're governed. The belief that a government's power should come from the people, not from God. I mean, that wasn't just revolutionary, it was heresy. And while all of this was going on, a totally separate revolution was happening in science. Thanks to giants like Isaac Newton, people were realizing the universe wasn't just some mysterious, magical place. It actually followed rules, understandable laws you could figure out with logic and reason, not just faith.
So it all boils down to this one crucial shift. Whether we're talking about government or gravity, humanity was making a hard pivot. We were moving away from a world where the ultimate authority was ancient belief and divine right, and toward a world where the authority was facts, logic, and what we could prove with our own minds. This was the spark.
Of course, ideas are one thing. Making them happen in the real world, that's a whole other story. This is the part of our story where all that philosophy gets put into practice, and believe me, the results were messy, and they were explosive. This is where ideas literally started to build nations.
Even how we thought about money was being turned upside down. The old system, mercantilism, basically said there's a limited amount of wealth in the world. It's like one big pie. If my country gets a bigger slice, your country has to get a smaller one. But then Adam Smith comes along and says, wait a minute, what if we can just bake more pies? He argued that trade and free markets could create brand new wealth for everyone. That idea alone laid the groundwork for the entire industrial world.
And then came the political earthquakes, first in 1776 and again in 1789. This is when all those polite philosophical debates spilled out of the salons and onto the battlefields. These two revolutions took those abstract concepts of liberty and rights and used them as actual blueprints to either build a new nation from scratch or tear an old one down to its foundations.
The American Revolution took that radical idea of self-government and actually made it happen. Man, can you imagine the nerve? A bunch of colonists stood up to the biggest empire on the planet and said, "Thanks, but no thanks. We don't need a king. We'll handle it from here." That single act sent a shockwave around the entire globe.
And if America sent a shockwave, France set off an earthquake that shook every throne in Europe. The French Revolution shouted that these new ideas weren't just for some new country across the ocean. They were universal rights for all people: liberty, equality, fraternity. Those three little words became a rallying cry for freedom that we still hear today.
So let's be really clear about this. These revolutions were the point of no return. The old way of doing things, the world of kings and subjects, wasn't just fading away quietly. It was being violently dismantled to make room for something new, something that was demanding to be born.
When you put all these pieces together, the philosophy, the science, the economics, the revolutions, you realize the 1700s weren't just another century. They were a bridge, the essential gateway that carried humanity from the ancient world into the modern one we're living in right now.
Just think about these transformations for a second. We went from being subjects, born to simply obey a ruler, to becoming citizens, people who have rights and a voice in their own government.
We went from a world that ran on superstition and blind faith to a world that was learning to trust in science, in reason, and in hard evidence.
And we went from a world map carved up by a few giant, sprawling empires to a world of individual nations, each one defined by its own people, its own culture, and its own right to exist.
Every single major debate we have today about democracy, about human rights, about science and reason, the fuse for all of it was lit in this one absolutely incredible century. It really truly was the gateway to our world.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. If that century was the gateway from their old world to their new one, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What fundamental shifts are happening right now? What new gateways are we passing through in our own time?
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and join Team Historical to uncover more stories from history.